Brady Quinn, welcome back to Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I hope you're doing well.
Doing well, just trying to stay dry. I'm actually living down in South Florida. It's been a pretty wet few days, so just trying to stay out of the rain.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's been the same way here in Tuscaloosa. It feels like, what was the old rock and roll song, Who's Going to Stop the Rain? At some point, somebody's got to stop the rain, right?
You'd hope so. I feel like the Alabama football team could, the way they've performed the past few years. So,
Brady, I want to talk about so many different things with you, and I want to talk more about Brian Daboll. We got a chance to know him, but his offensive coordinators are off limits here in Tuscaloosa. We want to better understand what he's going to bring to the University of Alabama. If I asked you just to describe Brian Daboll, can you help us just better understand the new OC here at Alabama?
Well, I mean, the first thing I'd say is, he works hours after hours tirelessly at preparing and putting together a game plan to find weaknesses in your opponent. So, as far as how this team will be prepared, he won't stop at any end of watching film and looking at things and dissecting a defense. I think that's one of the reasons why you see that Nick Saban's hired him, because he understands the work ethic that Brian Daboll puts into his preparation for his players and for his game plan every single week. The next thing that I think he always brings and allows is he's got answers for every situation that you're going to come across as a football player on the field. Whatever position, for me, obviously that's huge for a quarterback, but he's always able to have an answer for you in his system for no matter what you're going to face out there on the field. And the last thing is, he's multiple. He can do and have all sorts of different concepts and things that he can put in his system with different personnel groupings, different formations, trick plays, that sort of thing. So defensive coordinators are going to have to be prepared for a bunch of different things that this offense will be able to do, and they'll show from time to time, whether that's with different formations, personnel, shifts, motions, all those sort of things. A lot of that will ultimately depend upon the personnel and whether or not a quarterback, Jalen Hurts, or if it was Tua Tagovailoa, if he would be able to, be able to handle this system and handle everything that I think Brian Daboll can put on his plate.
Brady Quinn right now joining us here on the game, and as we move forward, Brady, I want to ask you, how would you describe him, run first or pass first type coordinator?
That's a good question. I think that from the times that I've been around him, I think he's been more of a run first. As far as his play calling and how he would base things. But, we had all sorts of different packages where we could have spread it out into 5 wide empty sets and things of that nature. I think he's got a vast array of things that he can do and have at his disposal. But I think he wants to, do what's best or in the best interest of the team or wherever those strengths are. But I think, philosophically, if you're going to look at most coordinators, I think they'd like to have balance. They'd like to be able to run the football and utilize some things off of play-action pass, and I think he's no different.
Brady, when you look at Brian Daboll, we've been a little bit shocked at some of the recruiting stories that we're hearing behind the scenes. You know him, you know his personality. Everything that we're hearing, it's A+. It's 10 out of 10. He's able to connect with those 16, 17, 18-year-old kids that are being recruited to Alabama. Maybe a little bit surprised that he's made that transition so easily from the recruiting analyst telling us that he's connected well on the recruiting trail.
Well, look, he started coaching in college football. I believe he started up at Michigan State, if I'm not mistaken. Or at least that was one of his early stops. So, I know he's got that in his background. And I think more than that, he's just a good old boy from Buffalo, New York. I mean, if you look at where he's from, where he grew up, he's a guy you're going to want to sit down and have a beer with. I don't call him Brian Daboll, I call him Dabes. I mean, that's how I always have known him. And I think when you have those conversations with him outside of football, you really understand that he's a very relatable guy. So it's not something that I think he would struggle with at all. I think he'd be great at being able to connect with a bunch of young recruits or young kids who are coming into Alabama. Because the other thing he brings is a lot of energy and enthusiasm. If there's one thing that Daves doesn't lack, that's his ability to get excited, his ability to get fired up. So I think all those things are probably on display when he walks into a family's living room. and he talks to a recruit, and he talks to the family about his passion, his excitement about the game of football, and probably calling plays for the University of Alabama.
When you look at Jalen Hurts from a quarterback perspective, what do you see?
Look, I mean, a ton of ability. I mean, he's just at the tip of the iceberg as far as what he's capable of. It's just a matter of now, one, how will he transition and adapt to a new system? That's a question. Two, can he continue to improve, his ability to throw the football? Because I think you've noticed, especially in the big moments, he seems to be able to rely on his ability to scramble and make plays with his feet. And there's something to that. There's a value to that. But you want to see him to continue to progress and become a better passer. And that's something that I think, in Brian Daboll's offense, it's going to require him to be. And he's got to continue to build on that. But, I mean, the sky's the limit for this young man. It seems like he's just got so much poise. Nothing seems to really faze him. So, all those things are going to bode well for a young man who's starting quarterback for Alabama because the spotlight's on him and because, and let's be honest, the odds just came out for, next year's national champion. And once again, Alabama's the favorite, I believe, at 3-1 odds.
Brady, how do you handle it from a quarterback perspective? Obviously, Jalen Hurts is the quarterback, and Alabama returns a starting quarterback, first time since 2013 when A.J. McCarron came back for his senior season. But then you look at Tua Tagovailoa coming in, hotshot quarterback, very impressive in the spring. You want competition, but you want it to be healthy. How do you handle that as a coach when you've got two hotshot quarterbacks?
Well, it's tough. I mean, to be quite honest, I think you look at both these two young men's skill set, and if I was going to tell you right now who's the better passer, I'd tell you right now it's Tua. And that's only from being able to watch really one high school game and a few highlights and things, as well as him outside in a T-shirt and shorts, throwing for different, camps and whatnot. But the young man has a very compact release. He seems accurate, seems to have a great base to him, and as well as able to make all the different variety of throws. Compared to Jalen Hurts, I think Jalen's obviously a better athlete. He's displayed that, and he's got the experience. I mean, that's just something that you can't overlook. And he probably has just as much arm strength, if not, maybe a little bit more. But again, you look at the types of throws he can make versus Tua, at least coming from the high school level. I don't know that he'd be quite as good. So I think it's tough to be able to handle being able to prepare your starter in Jalen Hurts, while also having this young, very, very talented young man in Tua who can really throw the ball around the field. Because I'm not saying your game plan changes a whole lot. I think the biggest difficulty you have as a play caller is you're going to be flipping the formation because you've got a righty and then a lefty. And the tough part about that is if you look at the construction of your offensive line, which this is where Nick Saban comes in because he's able to recruit, or Brian Daboll is able to recruit the best at Alabama. So really, they're okay on both edges, but typically you'd like to have your blindside left tackle, be the guy that's able to protect or be the best offensive lineman up front, and obviously that isn't the case then if you've got a left-handed quarterback in. Now it switches to your right tackle, but again, Alabama kind of lives in a world of luxury where they get who they want for the most part, and I'm sure they're both edges right now. You'd have to say are somewhat solid, even though you're going to have to replace a guy like Cam Robinson up front. So. Anyway, the point is, play calling in your mind has to change because you'd like to keep things in right-handed formation or a right strength formation because you typically have a right-handed quarterback, playing. It just makes a little bit more sense because, quarterbacks tend to be more accurate to the side of their arm. So right-handed quarterbacks tend to be more accurate to the right, left more to their left. That has to do with mechanics and footwork and things of that nature, but it does play an impact in play calling as well.
How much will the game slow down for Jalen Hurts in year number 2?
A ton. It really will, but that also coincides with how well he'll be able to adapt the terminology, the language of the system, where he's not thinking about it out there. He's just playing the game. That's the toughest part because you spend so many hours with the terminology and essentially learning a different language. Basically utilizing Spanish last year, and now you got to learn French. and you've got to be able to speak and operate at a high level, speaking a different language. So that's what it comes down to. I think that as far as the speed of the game, what he's seeing from different defenses, those things will be easy this year for him. It's just figuring out, how the system works, how the concepts work in relation to the defenses that they're seeing.
Brady, when you look right now at quarterback play across the country, what do you see as far as the progression as quarterbacks when you see across the landscape of college football?
The toughest thing that you see right now is quarterbacks are being asked to do less and less. I think they actually are as talented as far as passers as they've ever been. I think the specialized coaching that they now receive at a very young age helps prepare these young men to throw a football very accurately and have better mechanics, maybe even better footwork to some degree. But what's failing a lot of quarterbacks, especially as they transition from high school to college to the NFL, is their inability to know the game of football. They know some things, but they don't necessarily know a bunch of fronts, coverages, the weaknesses of a defense. And that's why I think Brian Daboll will be a godsend for a lot of these young men, because he's going to teach them that. This will be part of the system there at Alabama, understanding what the defensive strengths are in any given coverage in front and defense, and what their weaknesses are, so you can exploit that within the concept that you're utilizing on any given play. So that seems to be the biggest issue for me, is you've got so many times quarterbacks are looking over to the sideline for the answer. And there's justification for that, right? I had one coach tell me one time, he's like, hey, I've got a really nice house. I got a pretty big mortgage. And he said, I'm not going to put that mortgage on an 18-year-old. And I said, okay, I can understand that, but sometimes, it works out where you've got a smart player that you can utilize that asset and allow him to use his brain out there too, where he's not always finding that answer on the sideline. He can figure out that answer right there on the field. So that's something that I think is being missed in this day and age, where we see more hurry-up offenses that don't really look at the situation. I think there's an element of huddling that matters. You're able to sit down, talk about the situation, talk about the player, about the run, make sure everyone's on the same page, and be able to execute at a high level. You might not be able to run as many plays as you used to, but you can run the plays better. I'm a more quality over quantity guy, so I think that's one thing that's kind of lacking right now.
Brady, when you look at Jalen Hurts, at times he struggled with some of the accuracy issues. Can you clean that up?
Yeah, you can clean that up. I mean, sometimes those things, especially early on in the quarterback's career, are being late with your eyes and your feet, because you're not always going to be 100% confident with where you're going with the football and aligning yourself and being able to anticipate. So if you're playing catch-up through a reader progression, or with your eyes as far as where you should be looking, or confirming the coverage that you're seeing and where you're going with the football, you're going to be having to play catch-up, and your whole body's trying to play catch-up, and that kind of throws off your mechanics, and you're going to end up being inaccurate. So that happens. And I think as you get older and more comfortable with what you see out there in the field, you become more accurate, you become more calm and not as erratic with some of your throws, but also different, drill work, being able to work on, some of the throws that, it takes a little bit more athleticism, or it takes maybe an awkward throw, takes a little bit more practice at it than be able to complete it in the game. So those sorts of things, to me, in my opinion, I just think they take more reps, and I think the older you get, the longer, you're with, great coaches like Nick Saban or a guy like Brian Daboll, who I know will rep that with them. I think it allows you to continue to improve your game.
Is there something that you see from your perspective in Nick Saban that has allowed him to be so successful? Anything that stands out to you?
I just think he's got a system. And I think he knows the process of getting to what he wants and having success. And it's always team-centered. It's not centered around any one player, at least in my opinion. And I think he gets these stars, these kids who've got unbelievable ability. And you watch how many guys moved on to the NFL this year in the draft. And you can make that case almost any year in the draft. And I get them to play for one another. He gets them to be very humble and play for their team. And I think that's just a rarity nowadays. I mean, you see all these different ways that kids can try to draw attention to themselves with social media, and it seems like these stars go to Alabama, and everyone falls in line, and everyone continues to grow and learn and get better, and that's just something that's very rare. But again, that's what comes with having Nick Saban as your head coach, because he's got so much respect from the young men that decide to go there, that I think they understand the opportunity that they have to be in contention for a national championship every single year and to receive, some of the best, if not the best, coaching in the entire country.
I know this is probably a question that you could run for 20 minutes, but looking at Notre Dame, talking to college football fans here in Tuscaloosa, we do it 52 weeks out of the year, 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. Looking at Notre Dame, what's it like to play for a blue blood program like Notre Dame and wear that jersey?
I think the hard thing about answering that question is when you're there, when you're strapped on the helmet, putting on the jersey, you really don't have any inclination as to what it means. You can only get a sense of it once you're kind of away from it, because you're so focused and you're so geared towards your goals and trying to win and trying to play the game of football, and in the case of Notre Dame, having a very strenuous academic schedule as well. So your time, you have such minimal time there that everything is just cut down, and your focus is just kind of on your goals and your objectives. But it's after you get out from it, and even when you get in the NFL, you realize the following. You realize the attention. I mean, I still remember first getting drafted to Cleveland Browns, and thinking that the press conference we're having, I was like, man, I've had bigger press conferences than Notre Dame,
Sure.
and that's just kind of how it was. So, that's the thing that's unique too, in my opinion, about college football and some of those blue blood schools is, some of the all-time greats, and even when they go and have a successful career in the NFL, still don't overcome their attachment to their university. I think Notre Dame is one of those places where maybe besides Joe Montana, most quarterbacks who come from there, even if they have a successful career like Joe Theismann, people still identify them with Notre Dame.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, you think about that. We have Joe on here quite a bit as well, and we always love to talk about the history of Notre Dame. Final question. You look at your organization, and I'm just curious, when you look at what you're able to do there, Third and Goal Foundation, veterans, homemade, handicap accessible for wounded veterans, how'd you get involved in this? Because it just sounds unique in the way that you built this charity.
Yeah, I mean, it really stems from my father's service in the military. He was a Marine in Vietnam. My grandfather on my dad's side served as well in World War II. So, that's kind of been something that's been in my family for generations. And I've always wanted to give back and kind of serve in some way. And had I not had the game of football, I probably would have. So my dad and I, about 7 years ago, kind of came up with the idea of how we could help. And we started in Central Ohio, where I'm from, helping to make homes handicap accessible for wounded veterans who are coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan. And we ended up basically doing projects everywhere my football career went in the NFL, as far as out as Seattle, and Denver, and on through the rest of the places that I kind of ventured. And we've obviously had to be flexible and adapt and expand our mission because the needs of our veterans have changed. So we're just actually recently partner with the Warrior Scholar Project. So we're working with a bunch of veterans who are coming back from service who are looking to continue their education. And fortunately enough, Notre Dame is willing to have this program up here this summer where we'll be actually able to sit in and meet some of these young veterans who want to continue their education, whether it's an undergrad or finish graduate schooling, and be able to help them with an intensive program to help them adapt back to civilian life and some of the different life skills that are needed as they move forward with their education with the rest of their life. So pretty excited about a lot of the things that we have going on at Third and Goal. And to find out more information, you can visit our website, the number 3ANG, that's 3ANDG.com.
Yeah, Third and Goal Foundation.org is another way there, and a great way to connect with Brady Quinn on the Twitter account at @third_goal on the Twitter account. Hey, Brady, thank you again for helping us. We don't get access to the offensive coordinator, so we feel like we're on a mystery hunt to try to find more about Brian Daboll. Thank you again for sort of helping us understand the new offensive coordinator, and I think you got Alabama fans excited a while ago when you said run the football, man. I mean it's a when you look at Alabama, that's sort of the way that you define it. If they can run the football, and they didn't have a lot of – they had some success, but I don't think the fans think they ran it enough in that national championship game.
Yeah, well, I don't think there's anything to worry about between the talent, between the coaching staff, and I think the job Brian Daboll will do. I think Alabama will be in contention once again, and most likely, if I had to bet on it, I'd have to say this team will probably be playing in the college football playoff this year.